Hello, Dreamcatchers, and welcome to another exciting day in the Writer's Haven. I am your host, V Helena, and today in studio are the founders of the Annapolis Film Festival, filmmakers Patti White and Lee Anderson. Collectively, their resumes read like a tour de force, having worked in just about every cinematic genre possible. Everything from film documentaries to reality TV have passed through their creative hands and onto the silver screen or your television. They joined forces to stand up Filmsters, which is a multi-platform service provider of storytelling support that assists in development, all phases of production, and branding media. In 2012, they founded Filmsters Academy that provides summer youth programs on the art of filmmaking. We're going to talk about all of this and more, so join me in welcoming filmmakers Patti White and Lee Anderson to the Haven.
Thanks for having us.
We're thrilled to be here.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. So, the Academy, did I get that right? Did it start in 2012 or?
No, it started in 2002, actually.
Okay.
We're going into our 18th year.
Okay, and what was the genesis?
Hard to believe.
Actually, Patti has two sons, and one of them was very interested in filmmaking, and then his friends became very interested in filmmaking, and we weren't able to bring them on set with us because they were under 18, and we said, we should really do something for kids, because, at that time, digital filmmaking was kind of newish. Mm-hmm. So you could get a computer, and you could get an editing program, and you could get a digital camera. So we started with one beginner program in one room at Maryland Hall, and had Patti, myself, Trevor, her son, and his friend Fred were the first staff.
And then we had, I think, 12 beginners, and
ages
11 to 14.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we just took over, ran around Maryland Hall, and they had never seen anything like it at Maryland Hall. They was going, what's going on here? We were doing actually a little horror film was one of the first.
Yeah,
we had people running through scenes, and that was the very first year, the very beginning. And I think what happened is several of the parents of my son's friend were coming up and saying, would you ever do anything for kids? Because all of these kids started getting interested in cameras and telling stories. And
So now it's evolved 18 years later. We have almost 30 young professional staff and industry guest instructors. It takes place at the campus of Key School. We run a building. Okay. We have 72 students. We have 3 sections, beginner, intermediate, and advanced. Beginner is 11 to 15. Intermediate is 13 to 16. Advanced is 16, 17, and 18. So beginner program's 5 days, intermediate's 10, and advanced is 2 weekends and 2 weeks.
And our advanced program is actually very impressive. A lot of the films go on to other festivals, and they really give the students, a leg up when they apply to film schools, if they do, or other programs that are not film programs. It's just a very intense and really hands-on program.
Wow. I actually don't think there's anything like it. The part people don't understand is it's one-on-one mentoring. So we have professionals for every job on that advanced film. So there's a supervising director, a supervising producer, supervising editor, supervising cinematographer, supervising gaffer, which is lighting,
everything
sound,
is supervised, in other words.
Production design, It just goes on. And we've had guest instructors come and say, these kids have no idea what they're getting. I didn't get this till my, last year at USC.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's like college level.
Right. And they last couple of years, they've been shooting on at least a 4K red with, we have Steadicams, we have drones, we have sliders, we have Dana dollies.
And for the younger kids, and the older ones as well, but we have a complete costume room, we have hair and makeup, we have special effects.
With the stunt coordinator
we have stunt coordinators. I mean, we have a green screen. I mean, we have all the things that give kids a chance to really understand what filmmaking is all about.
It sounds like a great program. I know that a lot of the high schools are now, maybe even middle schools are really getting into that.
Yeah.
And then to have a program in the summer to continue that education.
Because they can run around. We're on a campus, so they can run around and literally set their movie wherever they want it to be. They can pretty much find anything, any kind of a scene that they want. We've had all kinds of films.
Oh, yes.
Foreign-looking films.
We have had our first beginner foreign film It was Italian with English subtitles in beginners.
Oh my goodness.
And you'll appreciate this, but we do spend a significant amount of time on story and story development. We're really strict about that.
That's kind of where, I think that's where we're kind of getting our credentials in the industry, like from the colleges, is that the kids come there and they understand a lot of the language and all of that, but that's learnable. But the story and understanding how you take a story from a pitch to a page, actually to the page, and to production,
in between,
and to after performance, and then a completed edit. So and post-production.
So is it mostly just production crew, or do you also have actors?
Yes,
we have actors. We have an acting team.
We have a whole acting team,
Okay.
and they work enormously hard. They're
local
ridiculous.
actors.
They're running in and out of wardrobe all the time in makeup, transforming. If you want to see any of the films, there are 186 of them available in the last 18 years that have been made, which is crazy.
Wow. Where would one go?
On our website.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, I mean, talking about this camp, certainly you guys have a love for filmmaking, and your separate accomplishments alone are just extraordinary. And so I'd like to dig a little bit deeper and talk more about you, the filmmaker, and how you individually got into filmmaking. What drew you to that art form?
You go.
No, you can go first.
Oh, boy. I have farther back to go. So I'll see you in 5 years. Anyway, yes, I didn't always know I wanted to be a filmmaker, let's put it that way, or even in this field. I was a political science major and a journalist, and that's how I went through college. Found my way to CBS News in New York, and worked on some of the highly political areas, and then found myself really drawn to the short documentaries that were on, like 60 Minutes, and the long form CBS reports, and then the shorter ones like magazine shows.
And what kind of jobs did you hold?
I went all the way up there. So I started out as a basically production assistant or assistant, and became an assistant producer, and then became an associate producer, and then I became a producer, and it went, and I was completely immersed in this. I loved it so much, and it was an amazing run, and I loved every bit of it, and
Patti,
made some films.
For those who are, and I call the audience dream catchers, there are people who have a dream and they're looking to catch it. And you guys are definitely dream catchers because you've had a dream and you've caught it. So what would you say to someone who's looking into getting into the field of production, just in the way that you started off? Because, as you said, you didn't start off having majored in it.
Right.
You just decided at some point that, this is something interesting, let me dive into it. What advice would you give
Well,
to
for me, it was a crossover, so I wasn't in the film world, so to speak, but the journalism world was getting into documentary and getting into storytelling, and I found that to be the place I really wanted to be. But I think so for people, and we tell this to the kids at our camp too, is that you don't have to know exactly. What you have to know is that you want to tell a story, and you want to tell it well. There has to be a beginning, a middle, an end, an arc, a journey of some kind. You have to be able to understand how characters develop. And a lot of times people just think of the art of it, because filmmaking is beautiful. And, you can go to a lot of films and see the great auteurs and say, wow, did you see that footage? It's wonderful. Yes, I did, but, there wasn't any story there. I mean, that's part of the problem, is that to combine the two. And that's what really gets interesting. And I think a lot of people don't know what they really want to do until they get into a field and start to have jobs. And I mean, when I was at CBS, I thought I really wanted to be in sort of harder news at the beginning. And then I got drawn into this storytelling part, and into films that actually really spoke to me. And I found myself fighting to get ahead, to go up the ladder that way and come in. And by doing that, I came up with story ideas. And I would take them to my executive producer and I would pitch all the time. I've got a great story. I'd go in and I've got a great story. You aren't going to believe this. You need to sit down. You've got to hear this.
So I want to get into your process of developing your story. But I want to turn to Lee for a moment and just kind of talk about how you ventured into this art form.
Interesting. I went to school here, I ended up in school in Maryland, so I went to Salisbury, which is now university. Back then it was college. But, they had a new major called communications then, and that was a little bit of everything. But I got really hooked on it was the era of MTV was emerging, VH1.
Yeah.
Everybody was doing music videos. It was an exciting time, and I wanted to be involved in that. And television was bursting from 4 channels to cable, and that was when I entered this. So everything then was tape, and non-linear editing was non-existent. You had to actually figure out your story on paper first and then cut it together.
See, I learned on film. She had to learn the hard way.
Yeah,
that was the horrible technology era. But
yes.
So it became, as we said then, there was a group of us all bitten by the bug. We just loved watching a story be captured and come to life. So I was initially focused on news, and I worked for television, but I started a magazine show at this college that aired on local television, and then that still goes on today. It's my legacy at Salisbury. It's called Seagull Magazine. So all the film people still do that, and they tell stories on campus and in the community. And then I just took whatever job I could get. I got hired first at WMDT. I got hired the only job I could get was to produce commercials in the commercial production department. So I made lots and lots of car commercials, which was very boring. I tried very hard to make it interesting. I'm the person that created all the sub-stories for the Preston car commercials. We had the Preston Frog. So we did stunts. We had them parachuting in. We had all this story about the Preston Frog in every commercial, kind of like Mr. Bill. Remember Saturday Night Live had Mr. Bill? So we did that. But, how many commercials can you do? Come on. So I was more interested in other storytelling. I, meanwhile, switched and got hired at WBOC, the competing CBS affiliate, and still didn't really get to tell too many stories, but eventually I got to do some specials that were like documentary-style specials around the holidays. And when I left there, I came back to the Annapolis area, which is the area I grew up in, and I went to my hairdresser, and I'm telling him that I was looking for a job, and I'm trying to transition back to this market, this area. And guess what? He cut Patty's hair too. So we were the only 2 people he knew that were interested, so he made the introduction. The joke is today our office is 2 doors over from the hair place.
Is he still there?
Yes,
yeah,
he's still there.
So all these years later, 28 years in May, we will have been working together.
Right.
Introduced by our hairdresser, which,
And the first few years, and we had 2 male partners who were my partners before I had met Lee, and so there were the 4 of us. The 2 of them were on the West Coast, and then we're here, and it was interesting because our names, that was our company for the first so many years.
It was called,
and then
Diesenfeld Miller White Productions.
Right.
Okay.
And then
it was DMW.
And then we're on location in Denver. For a film, and we're staying with a friend that she had a 6-year-old boy, and when we left, he was so disappointed that we had gone with all the gear and the excitement that he said, "Mommy, when are the filmsters coming back?" And that's how we got our name.
Wow.
We're named by a 6-year-old.
That's an awesome story.
But we said, well, that's what we are. We're filmsters. We come into places. We do our thing.
It sounds like
we run on the gerbil.
Run on the gerbil.
Like the Avengers. I mean, it sounds like
kind of.
And we're gone.
We do have a wonderful piece of art that hangs in our office that we found in a shop in Ithaca, New York. It's kind of our creed. Yeah. So it's like this crazy design with this guy on a red, like a flying carpet with a hat with one eye, and it's art, but it says, "Great great achievement, great love and great achievement involve great risk. And that's how we've done everything that we've done.
Yep, it's that, and whatever it takes is the other thing.
Okay.
Because believe me, we have been in that whatever it takes category.
Okay, and so that is a great segue into the film festival. But we're going to talk about that during the second piece to this two-part series. So I want to go back to what you started to talk about with storytelling. And your process for it. And I'm wondering if you two share a similar process when you collaborate, or like how does that synergy work? You can talk about first individually how you approach it, and then when you're working on projects together, how you approach it.
Like Lee always says.
People always say, okay, there's two of you.
Yeah.
What do you do and what do you do? And like, how do we know? Because you're both producers, she directs, I produce, I line produce. So like, what do you really do? Because producer, nobody knows. The real definition of producer is you do everything that you can't afford to hire somebody else to do.
Right.
But
and then some.
But in our situation, the quick answer is she's the who, what, and why, and I'm the how, when, and where. Even though we cross over.
Okay.
We kind of
So logistics?
All of that.
All the
operational logistics.
But here's the
planning.
thing, we cross over into each other's.
Right.
When we come up with an idea, and if I have an idea, I will go to Lee and I'll say, listen to this, I just thought of that. And then she'll say, what if we did this? Or what if it could be, and then I'll be going, well, but then we'd have to be, and then the next thing we're off to the races, and we're creating the world, or that world of that story.
And how are we going to do it?
Then we have to live in the world after we've created it and figure out how to get it out there so people can enter that world. I mean, that's how we look at it.
Is your approach for documentaries different from narratives?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what you just laid out, that's kind of how you would initially approach which?
A lot of times in documentary, it's more character-based or event in someone's life-based, so that there's something unfolding or happening that we're trying to get in right at the beginning, so we see the character naturally arc through whatever challenge or process or goal they're trying to achieve.
Exactly. And the other thing with documentary, the process is usually we stumble on a story that's happening, and it's happening to someone, and it's larger than life in its own way. It doesn't have to be larger than life, obviously, but something that is telling such a unique story. Maybe hasn't been told, or hasn't been told in that way that we want to tell it.
But you are scripting it.
Well, here's the thing about documentary. Here's the thing about documentary. It's not scripted in the way you might think a documentary would be scripted. Yes, you script pieces of it, but the script doesn't come at the... Some people do this. They script it at the beginning. And there are some reality shows get scripted and all of those things. But in true documentary, back in the day when we really did the pure kind of documentaries at CBS, you didn't script. You went out there. What you scripted was you knew who your characters were. You pre-interviewed them. You interviewed them. And their narrative, what they say in the interview, is what the script is. And it drives it. And you're going and you're hearing what they're saying, and therefore you're going to you're going to film that, or you're going to film the next rendition of that, or what it could be, or the confrontation of it, or the pulling off the covers of it, or whatever kind of a doc it is. And you're looking for that, whether it's investigative or character-driven or whatever. So you're looking for that. But the script comes after you've got the bulk of your work, and the script is really transitioning. It's helping to put the pieces of the story together. But so much of it now is you usually let the interviews. They're cut back and forth between,
And you're often sort of creating a scenario. So you may be helping them tell you what the next story beat is, because they're telling you the events in their life that are unfolding, and we know that that's tangential and we don't need that. But so maybe we need to show up on this day and shoot this part, because that's going to get us to the next piece. So you kind of have to map it out, and some of the stuff ends up on the floor that you don't use. We've all shot things that we love, and then we have to kill our babies because it doesn't stay with the through line of the film. But that's part of the exploration of doing a documentary, and sometimes you stumble across other things in the process. But it's never firmly, it's more like an outline.
Right.
And you have to be prepared that the outline can change based on the character or somebody else entering the picture. I mean, a lot of things can happen, and you still kind of have to know where you might end up.
And you know, one of the things, I mean, we have an amazing story. We don't have time to tell it, but we have an amazing story that happened to us as filmmakers, which was that, you know, I stumbled on a story when I was really just in my 20s at CBS, and it was an amazing, mind-blowing kind of story about a wagon train that took kids out into the wilderness and instead of jail and tried to change their lives and all of that. And I went on this wagon train. I sold it to them there as an amazing story, and went on this wagon train on and off for 4 months, filmed 5 kids out of 90 kids that were on the train, and one of them was a 14-year-old teenage girl from Denver, Colorado, who had a very troubled past, and focused a lot on her. Well, jump ahead, that film went on the air, it had a big to-do, and jump ahead 20 years or whatever it was, Lee and I are working together. And the guy who ran that program calls me and tells me that he just got a call from her and that she wants to put her 12-year-old son in the same program. So,
20 years later.
Are you interested? And I'm like, wow. And I talked to Lee. Lee already knew and had seen my original film.
No, there was no question. In fact, she was on the phone talking to Bob, and I just opened the drawer of blank credit card applications, and I was filling them out.
Like, okay, we're going to do this some way or another.
Like, we're going to make this happen.
Yeah, we're going to make this happen. And the crazy thing about it is that we went out there and spent a year basically making that film on and off, you know, doing other things and on and off, and told that story of the mother and the son. Now, you know, I mean, it was amazing, and we got the old footage from CBS. We were able to get back there and get the old footage to put the mother and son at the same age in the same program, dealing with the same people. I mean, it's sociological. Yeah. And then the absolute craziest thing of all is that jump ahead another 12 years or so, and my sons, who were teenagers at the time and saw what we were doing and were around us and met the boy James and got to know him, when he ended up in prison because they wouldn't let him. Denver wouldn't let him stay in the program, so he ended up at home. He ended up in a prison when he was 15 years old and didn't get out till he was 18. And when he got out, being exposed to that filmmaking process got him very interested. He ended up going out to L.A., looking up my sons, telling them his story, you know, as a peer. And then my sons made their first movie, because they're movie makers. They made their first movie called Jamesy Boy about him.
Shot here in Maryland.
Shot here in Maryland.
Filmed at Jessup Prison and in South Baltimore.
This is how all these generations of, I mean, if you know when you're dealing with people and you're telling their stories, we just are not the filmmakers that throw them away. You know, we value the people whose stories we're telling, and we stay in touch with them, and we want to make sure they're all right and do the right things. James, by the way, is now a big producer for Vice. He's an amazing
He's doing great. Oh, he's the kid that they wanted to throw up, lock away, and throw away the key, and he's amazing.
Right.
So it debuted or premiered. Was it last year or the year before?
What, Jamesy Boy? No, it was 2013, I think, that it came out. Yeah,
14 at the festival, the second year.
Right,
14. Okay.
So
I still hear
you
people
know,
talking
I mean,
about that
the
film.
thing is, it's a great responsibility when you take someone's story in a documentary versus a narrative version where you can change it and say it's based on
creative
a
license.
true story. But a documentary, you're asking someone to show it all, warts and all, pour their heart out. But there's also something really therapeutic about doing documentary, because sometimes when you interview someone, it makes them accountable to themselves because they said it to you on camera. So
often,
quite often, it's like, okay, I said I was going to do that. Now I'm going to look silly if I don't, or I'm going to at least try. But it sort of holds them accountable to something because they're sharing that story and they know other people are going to see it.
And then, if they can't handle it, if they can't contain that, then it all falls apart. And then you're there. Well, I mean, you're there with your cameras, and then you see a reality that sometimes people are not prepared to see, because the hard truths are tough to watch. And, you know, one of my issues, even though we've done reality television, but one of my issues with reality television is that it's you know,
not just your issue.
It's it's not real. I mean, so, you know, I always said if I wrote a book, I'd want to call it The Real Reality, you know what I mean? Because we're not understanding that word anymore. It's
well,
different.
it all shifted after the strike, and then they created a new title because they didn't want to pay certain roles, so they created a title called story producer. And they sit in an office without having even gone in the field, and they write the story beats from a phone conversation. And there's so much that happens that you feel and you intuit, and you kind of learn from even other people in the story that informs you of what the story should really be. And they're missing it. They're missing it.
I mean, sometimes things happen, and these reality shows have real things, but so often they're guided.
Yeah.
And they're really guided.
Absolutely.
And you know, that's okay. People love it, and they buy into it, and it's fun, and it's entertainment.
Oh, it's entertainment, but when you do a doc, you have to have the heart to go through that beginning to end. And believe me, nobody really gets out of doing a film for less than 18 months commitment, if it's a feature of any kind.
Feature doc.
And you have to be committed. And when you make a doc, you don't even know sometimes, like, okay, is this ever going to end up somewhere? Am I going to sell this? Most of those are passion projects because you either really want to tell a story that hasn't been told, it's timely, you have amazing access, it's an important issue that people need to learn about, or it happened to you and you're finding somebody else to tell that story. You know, there's a reason like that, and it's not generally motivated by a financial reason.
Dreamcatchers, I know you enjoyed this episode of the Writers Haven Show, and if you're in the area, check out the 7th Annual Annapolis Film Festival, March 21st through the 24th. It's a must-attend event, so you don't want to miss out. Next week, we begin our Black History series of films showcasing films written and directed by African-American filmmakers, highlighting event-driven issues concerning the plight of the African-American in the United States. Kicking off the series is a 2-part documentary entitled Bates Center of Excellence. Tune in to hear more about our showcase of films or visit our website at www.writershavenshow.com for more information. Thanks for joining me, and until next time, catch fire on purpose. Dreamcatchers, welcome to another exciting season of the Writers Haven Show. I'm V Helena, your host and executive producer. The Writers Haven Show was created to showcase the passion, process, and projects of writers of literature, television, and film. In our 3rd season, we've expanded our programming to include songwriters. We hope to inspire and motivate you with this season's lineup of artists. Stream our shows on iHeartRadio, Spreaker, iTunes, Sonos, SoundCloud, Spotify, Alexa, and YouTube. We drop new episodes every week, so subscribe and never miss a show. Find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Tumblr at Author V Helena, and visit our website at www.writershavenshow.com. See you in the Haven, and until next time, catch fire on purpose.
Look at you. You're at the top of your game. Wait, is that your car? Uh-oh. Yeah, I saw that coming. That will throw you off track. Let's try this again. Smart move. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.